when you factor in, right, there's probably 5 small forwards who are getting the most look into AFL level for Collingwood this year. You've got Jamie Elliott, and this is when they're all healthy. Jamie Elliott, Lockie Schultz, Beau McCreary, Bobby Hill, and Joe Richards. You can't play 5 small forwards in the final series. It's probably going to get reduced down to 4, maybe 3 when Dan McStay comes in. Who knows? But let's say 4. And I've got Joe Richards ahead of Lockie Schultz right now. But geez, more chaos for the game leading up to the Doggies at Marvel Stadium this Friday night. We got over 14 players listed on the injury list. Let's dive into it and see where we're at and go from there. So starting with Jordan De Goey, an abdominal tendon tear leads to De Goey being out for another 3 to 4 weeks at least. So we won't see him before the bye, unfortunately. Tom Mitchell is still a couple of weeks away as well with that foot issue. We know with the foot, there's never a certainty with the timeline just because of how easily a foot can get upset when you consider the amount of load that goes through the joints in the feet on a week-to-week or daily basis at a full-time training load for a club at AFL level. We probably also won't see Jamie Elliott before the bye. Jack Bytel is supposedly available. Hoskin Elliott 2 weeks away, so close to sort of, we're all nearing, a lot of these injuries are sort of revolving around the bye sort of period, so it might be handy to be conservative and take that extra week if needed. I think we have North Melbourne. So we have the Doggies, we have Melbourne, and then we have North Melbourne, and then the bye. So I think with North Melbourne being hopefully a tick in our books as far as the wins are concerned, I think we can be a little bit more conservative this time round and just get us through to the bye and really work on our rehab and get us fit and firing by the time we get to the back end of the season. I saw somewhere today with Matthew Lloyd suggesting or raising his concerns that Collingwood are in some strife when it comes to not the premiership hopes, but their finals hopes. I think that's maybe one layer too far into the conversation. I think it's an overreaction, but we'll see in due time. We've got Reef McInnes, who is also in the concussion period still, so he's still going through his protocols. Jeremy Howe is available, expected to make it to Friday night, so we'll talk about selection around players like Jeremy Howe a little bit later. We've got Josh Eyre, who also is available around the round 13 mark, so at round 12 now. So hopefully in a couple of weeks or within the next month or so, maybe he gets an opportunity at AFL level with the much needed height that he possesses. I think he is 6'6", so could be a good look in the next month or so. And then we've got Hoskin Elliott. I think I had mentioned maybe I haven't mentioned yet, but he's got a hammy 2 weeks. We've got Josh Carmichael, who is still undergoing ongoing concussion protocol, so to be continued for Carmichael. And then Dan McStay is expected to return to game simulation post the bye, which is in June. So really, if he can tick that box and get through some contact drills and the match simulation, then maybe we really will see Dan McStay feature in this year and pretty much prove all the doubters wrong and come back around and hopefully give us a real serious tilt at the flag. So those are the pre-existing injuries that I've highlighted that we've been dealing with in the short term. The new injuries that concern Collingwood are one being Mason Cox with that concussion, and also he's suffered some sort of MCL strain, so he'll be out for 4 to 6 weeks with that MCL strain. It wasn't a nice sight to see. I recognised straight away that he looked like he was knocked out mid-air, but once he hit the deck, he was quite quick to recover and sort of probably took away the grossness of what a concussion usually looks like. But he looked like a ragdoll in the air, and that's why his knee folded underneath him like a chair. So, yeah, 6 weeks for him. And then Brody Myercheck, 2 to 3 weeks with a recurring hammy injury, unfortunately. You can always make the case, did he come back too early? Age, the way he puts himself out there on the field on a weekly basis. I don't know. I feel like he was fit, he played, he got through most of the game until he didn't get through to the end. So it's unfortunate, and it is what it is. Scott Pendlebury, a bicep strain. I'm not too sure where that's at. I think he had scans today or yesterday. I'm thinking or hoping he's available. He did finish out the game, so fingers crossed we can get Pendles over the line and have him available for Friday night for an intriguing matchup with a certain player for the Doggies. And Lastly, we have Joe Richards with that 4th metatarsal fracture, which is unfortunate. And I don't like seeing injuries to the feet because you just don't know what the timeline looks like. They're suggesting at least a month out, but we'll see where that goes once we get closer to that 4-week mark. I wouldn't be surprised if they push out a couple extra weeks here and there. So unfortunate given how amazing his form has been for Collingwood. A meteoric rise, really, but it is what it is. And the barrier is the way now. We've got to work around the impediment in front of us, and that impediment is the injuries. That's the obstacle that is in the way. So that's the way it is. And just we'll quickly touch on the Bulldogs injuries list. I won't go into it to great depths because we don't really care about the Doggies. We're more so worried about the Collingwood helm. Nick Caulfield is out, shoulder 3 to 5 weeks. Gardner, wrist 3 months. Johannesson, hamstring 5 weeks. I feel like he's always out with some sort of hamstring niggle just on the side. Tom Liberatore still dealing with the concussion issue, so he's a couple weeks away. Bailey Smith, ACL. Probably doesn't matter because he's coming to Collingwood next year by all reports. And then Cody Waitman with a dislocated elbow, 5 weeks. And the new injuries that they have sustained from the game against Sydney last week at the SCG was obviously the MCL to Aaron Norton, also out for 4 to 5 weeks. Ed Richards, who's been absolutely killing it with his new role in the midfield during the absence of Tom Liberatore. So they'll greatly miss him in the middle because he's been dominant and really just, I guess, not revivified, but just molded into a different type of looking player. He resided in the back line, was a great intercept player, but now he's shown that he can play in the middle and do really well at that. And then lastly, Anthony Scott had a concussion in that game against Sydney. So let's get into the actual game itself and let's recall our previous history against the Bulldogs. In our last 10 games, we're 5-5, so we split the difference. I think we've won the last couple of games against the Doggies. Before that, they'd won 3 in a row on a trot. But last time we played them was on a Friday night at Marvel Stadium, similar to this Friday coming up, in front of 43,000, so expect to get another sold-out crowd for that game. Collingwood ended up winning that game 77-89. The Pies did well to hold down the Fortress in that 4th quarter in particular. We had a 38-point lead, but apparently that wasn't entertaining enough for the lads on the ground and for the Collingwood Army, so Collingwood decided to evaporate that lead down to 12 points with a couple of minutes to go, and Collingwood end up winning, fortunately, while being minus 17 in the contested ball count, minus 7 inside 50s, and that was just really the face of Collingwood last year, losing key stats, but in the end, Collingwood score when it needed to score and hold up when it needed to hold up, and that was really just the face of it all last season. Some stats that did favour in our way was the fact that we won in the stoppage score source. We scored 43-9, which is outrageous considering the midfield that Western Bulldogs have: Bontempelli, Adam Treloar, someone else, Tom Liberatore, those types of players who dominate the clearance count. But in this game, where Nick Dacos was again a full-time midfielder for the most part, we just dominated in the stoppage score source. So that was really pleasing to see, despite losing the clearance count by 3. And that game in particular, on the under the roof at Marvel, there was a high defensive half chain game transition. So the ball was moving from end to end with ease for both sides. Collingwood had scored 48 points and the Bulldogs scored 51, whereas the AFL average typically sits around the 32-point mark for this year. Another stat that Collingwood would consistently win last year was the tackle count. We were plus 14 in tackles and we had plus 24 intercept marks, which just goes to point that we were able to hold up despite the barrage of inside 50s that Western Bulldogs had put on Collingwood in that game. Now, who was our biggest performers in that game? There was none better than Isaac Quaynor. He had a career game. I would argue this is the best game he's had for Collingwood to date. He had 27 disposals, running at 88% disposal efficiency, and he had 8 intercept marks, which is a career high within itself. So, with Isaac Quaynor not performing numbers-wise as well as he did last year, maybe it's a nice little omen to take into this game, considering how well he played against them, and take that confidence into this game and maybe buffer his form a little bit. Now, and I mentioned in the podcast with Caleb the other day that because of Quaynor's role, sometimes the ball's not going to roll his way. It's not going to be in the air where he is all the time. So, yes, his intercept marks are down. Yes, his disposals might be down. But at the end of the day, if he's playing his role and isn't necessarily losing his defensive encounters, then that's all that matters. So, yeah, it would be nice to see him maybe get some numbers on the board on Friday. But nevertheless, he plays his role and he's at the volition of what his role asks for him. And it's not asking for him to be the main ball user or to be the main interceptor. And that's the way it is. Darcy Moore was great as well, 22 disposals at 95% disposal efficiency and 3 intercept marks. Nick Dacos, 29 disposals, 15 contested possessions, 11 clearances, 2 goals, and 3 Brownlow votes against arguably the best midfield in the land of the AFL. And lastly, Ash Johnson, 3 goals, 2 contested marks, 3 shots, 3 goals. So an opportunity for Ash Johnson to maybe come into the side against the Bulldogs on Friday, but let's save that talk for the selection conversation a little bit later in this video. The high-performing Bulldogs from that game, we got Jamara Ugle-Hagan had 17 disposals, 3 contested marks, 7 shots on goals for 2 goals, 3 behinds, 2 shots didn't register, averaging nearly 5 shots per game this year at age 22. He is, if he hasn't broken out already, he's daring to. He's beckoning, he's budding, he's everything in between. He reminds me of a younger Lance Franklin. I don't know if that's a little bit too far of a stretch to suggest that he fits that sort of caper and echelons of a player like Buddy, but I really do think he has that potential. And to be doing what he's doing at age 22 with the confidence and the dominance in the air, I think this is a player we've got to watch out for. And then along with that, the obvious one is Marcus Bontempelli. He had 29 disposals, 15 contested possessions, 11 ground ball gets at 6'4" is just deserves a clap. The fact that he can get down that low below his knees at 6'4", collecting 11 ground ball gets into midfield. Similar to Patrick Cripps, they have an ability that a lot of tall players don't. And that's to be clean below their knees against other players in the midfield who are much shorter and you'd back them in typically over the taller blokes in there for the ground ball gets. The Western Bulldogs so far, well, their key team stats in the last 5 matches, let's talk about it. Number 1 side, scoring from stoppages. As I said, in the last time we met them, we trounced them in scores from stoppages. So I know they will remember that, and that would hurt them because that's a big part of their identity, to be strong in clearance, to be strong in stoppage scores. And for us to do what we did to them last season, they're going to take that personally and try and right their wrongs this Friday. But they're going to have to do it without players like Ed Richards and Tom Liberatore, who have been pivotal to help them in their midfield dominance this season so far. They're also top 4 for least points conceded from defensive half transitions, which again, it's something Collingwood was able to do quite easily and at their own will in the last time we played them last year. But vice versa, so did the Bulldogs. They had it as they pleased against us in defensive half transitions. So let's see if that stat in the last 5 matches holds up against Collingwood with players like Nick Dacos, John Noble, and Steele Sidebottom running off the half-back flanks. Let's see how they can handle players with the ball use ability that we have in those 3 players. The other stat that looms large in the last 5 matches for the Bulldogs is the fact that they're second in the league for inside 50 differential. They're plus 14. So they know how to get it in there, and they got it in well against us last time. We were able to hold up and beat them. Let's see. Hopefully we can change a few of those stats. Hopefully we can, I guess, tighten up the contested possession differential and the inside 50 differential and lean on pillars like our transition and our scores from stoppage. And of course, our pressure. The Dogs did play against Sydney last Thursday, I believe, at the SCG. The Bulldogs actually had more scoring shots than Sydney. It was 28-22 with 2 players short on the bench with Anthony Scott concussion and Ed Richards concussion. And actually, 3 players because we also have Aaron Norton who was down and out with that MCL. So to outscore, scoring shots wise, a side like Sydney who are clearly a premiership fancy and basically would have won had they kicked a bit straighter. It just goes to show that this team can't be slept on going into this game. And given all our injuries, it's just going to be a task that's going to be made even harder. But a win would just totally galvanise Collingwood and suggest that our system just overhauls any sort of talent that, I guess, comes up against Collingwood. So yeah, like I said, they had more scoring shots. Their expected score for the Doggies should have been, or was, 97-87 in the Dogs' favour. So had they kicked straight, it's a different story. They were also plus 33 for contested possessions, which is a smashing. And with that stat alone, they should be winning that game. They struggled to move the ball against Sydney. I think they only scored 17 points from defensive half. So hopefully Collingwood have highlighted that and have recognised that maybe that's an opportunity to, I guess, create a forward half game if they're not able to move the ball very well from the back half. But it also suggests that maybe Bulldogs had a forward half game themselves against Sydney. I think they did have a lot of dominance in that second half where the ball was stuck in the forward half. They just couldn't convert. And to support that statement, Bulldogs did win the inside 50 count by plus 14. So there you go. Probably had more of a forward half game rather than a defensive half game available to them, given the circumstances of that second half. Adam Treloar was one of the top performers for the Doggies in that game against Sydney. 30 disposals, 15 contested possessions. Julga Hagen had another 6 shots on goal for 3 goals too, and 4 contested marks, which is massive. So Charlie Dean, Darcy Cameron, Billy Frampton, Braden Maynard, be ready for that. This guy just jumps at anything and everything and pretty much plucks them all out of the air. And then Bontempelli, of course, had 26 disposals, 19 contested possessions, 66% centre-bounce attendances, which I would expect that to rise against Collingwood, given the fact that we now have Ed Richards also out of the midfield, along with Libba being out for the last few weeks also. So maybe less forward time for the Bont, unless, I guess, the Doggies maybe rely a little bit more on someone like Riley Sanders to ensure that they can get that mid-forward split that they want for Marcus Bontempelli. Fringe players and selection talk. I love this one. I think Charlie Dean will continue to hold his spot even with Jeremy Howe being available this week. I think Jeremy Howe likely swings forward in the absence of Brodie Myercheck. Now, you could debate, well, does Ash Johnson come in for Myercheck and then Charlie Dean goes out and then Jeremy Howe comes in and slides right back into the defense? I'm not too sure. I'd like to see Charlie Dean remain for a little bit longer to see what he's about, and then Jeremy Howe comes in for Myercheck, which means I think Ash Johnson is still slightly behind the pecking order. I don't think he's going to get picked if I had to guess, because I would opt rather for Nathan Kruger to play as that other key tall forward, because he has the ability to pinch hit in the ruck, which is what Cox typically does, and we know Cox isn't available. So I'd go Kruger in with Jeremy Howe. So those are 2 selections in. So Jeremy Howe in for Brodie Myercheck and Nathan Kruger in for Mason Cox. I think Allen probably holds his position due to the injuries. I think Will Parker holds as well. And with Joe Richards being out, maybe does that mean someone like Finn McRae comes back into that undesirable half-forward flank role that he might be asked to fulfill? Obviously, he'd probably prefer to be in the midfield, but it's likely that if he is to come in, he'll probably be in that capacity at the half-forward flank. Harvey Harrison, I think the wing is his, put his name on it, which gives Sidey less leeway in the team. If the halfback flank position doesn't work for Sidebottom, I don't think he could reserve a wing position with Patrick Lipinski and Harvey Harrison owning it right now, in saying that Ed Allen is getting time on the wing as well. So I don't know, does Ed Allen remain in the team? I think he does, maybe because of the injuries, we'll see. Does Finn McRae have any ability to play on the wing? I know he hasn't got the best outside ball use, but maybe there's some food for some thought there. And then just a quick congratulations to Harvey Harrison being nominated as the round 11 Rising Star. As we know, he had 13 disposals and 3 goals from 3 shots, was kicked clutch goals essentially for Collingwood against Fremantle against a hostile Perth crowd. So well done to Harvey Harrison, and really loving what he's doing so far for Collingwood. As far as what I would like to see from a Collingwood perspective this Friday night against the Doggies, I want to see more of Josh Dacos in the midfield. He's been averaging roughly 10% centre-bounce attendances for the year. I'm wondering if we can eventually, at some point in his career, get it up to the 40% mark. I just think there's too much talent, similar to Nick Dacos when he was running off the half-back flank. There's too much talent to keep him there. Get him in the middle. Get your best players in the middle. I think Josh Dacos and Nick Dacos, along with Scott Pendlebury, Jack Crisp, and De Goey and Tom Mitchell and Sullivan, I think there's got to be a perfect makeup somewhere in there, and I think Josh Dacos has to be a part of that conversation in the future. An interesting fact about Josh's centre bounce attendances this year: for every 5 centre bounce attendances that Josh Dacos is in, he gets at least 1 clearance every 1 in 5, which is top 5 in the league for players with 10% or more centre bounce attendances. So he has the ability to find that centre clearance as well, and he's just got such a polished right foot, and I'd love to see Josh using that in the midfield, in the midst of it all, where the contest is, and learn to find that composure under duress in the contest and break out of the stoppage, or to kick going inside 50 with composure. Obviously on the wing you have more time, it's a different look, but I think similar to Nick Dacos, who's adapting to that now, I think Josh Dacos has the same ability to do so. I'd like to see Lockie Schultz with some more offensive output eventually. Is it confidence? Is it adapting to the team? Is it X, Y, Z? There's a lot of variables. Who knows? We know what he does on the defensive side of his game. It's been highlighted. You can see, if you go watch the game live, you can see his running efforts. He is a defend first forward, despite nearly kicking 2 goals a game last year. When you have players like Bobby Hill, Jamie Elliott, and now Joe Richards ahead of you as far as what they're doing with the ball, sometimes your stats are gonna take it. And I think we all accepted that maybe naturally there was gonna be a decline in, I guess, goals, goal assists, disposals for someone like Lockie Schultz. In saying that, there's no reason why that can't rebound, and confidence does a world of good for a small forward. It's a tough role to play, but I'd like to see some more offensive output, especially when you factor in, right, there's probably 5 small forwards who are getting the most look-ins at AFL level for Collingwood this year. You've got Jamie Elliott, and this is when they're all healthy. Jamie Elliott, Lockie Schultz, Bo McCreary, Bobby Hill, and Joe Richards. You can't play 5 small forwards in the final series. It's probably gonna get reduced down to 4, maybe 3 when Dan McStay comes in. Who knows? But let's say 4. And I've got Joe Richards ahead of Lockie Schultz right now. But let's not jump the gun. Let's see what happens towards the back end of the year. But hopefully Lockie Schultz can get something done this Friday night. With Joe Richards absent and also Jamie Elliott, we're gonna need goals from Lockie Schultz. Without a doubt, that has to happen this Friday. As I mentioned just before, I'd like to see Charlie Dean get challenged a little bit more. We saw what happened when he got challenged earlier in the year when the whole team wasn't playing well. He did crumble, but I think I'd like to see Charlie Dean exposed a little bit more to get more of a sample size on what he's like under duress. There wasn't a lot of that against Fremantle, I didn't feel. I thought he played well, but I just want to see a little bit more of a challenge for Charlie Dean on Friday night against the Doggies. And you'll get that with the three-pronged attack, whether that's Rory Lobb if he comes in, and then obviously it's Darcy and Ugle-Hagan. I want to see Nick Dacos' redemption curve continue regarding the Brownlow that he pretty much lost thanks to injury last year. He has actually collected 39 coaches' votes over the last 4 games, which is the most ever in a 4-game span. I think the player beneath him is Dustin Martin. I think he had 38 or 37. So it just goes to show what type of stretch of games Nick Dacos is having right now, and three voters in those games that he's played, probably slowly getting closer and closer to the likes of Isaac Heaney and Zach Butters and I think Bontempelli as well. Maybe Petrarca's in that conversation. So hopefully Nick Dacos can get his first Brownlow in his 3rd year of AFL. How do Collingwood win? Well, it's a massive clash in the engine room, as I pointed out to already. Who dominates the scores from stoppage sources? It's the number 1 team being Western Bulldogs versus the number 4 team versus Collingwood in the last 5 matches for scores from stoppages. So that will tell a massive story as to how the game transpires. Contested ball is obviously going to be another big task this week, considering Western Bulldogs plus 30 against Sydney is a massive feat against a very competitive side. Like I said, a premiership fancy. And the Bulldogs trio of forwards are going to be giants in the forward line. We will be shorter than them because no one's taller than someone like Rory Lobb, Sam Darcy, and Ugle-Hagan is tall as well. He'd be at least 6'5" or 6'6". So they're giants, and they're going to stretch our defenders in Billy Frampton, who's probably not as athletic as someone like Ugle-Hagan. Darcy Moore probably will fancy that matchup and try to play loose off that as well. So yeah, we're going to ask a lot of players like Billy Frampton, Charlie Dean, and Braden Maynard on Friday night. I think we just continue to trust our system, our pressure game. We know how good that's been for the last few years, and that's been the key pillar to our game, and everything comes thereafter after that. So if we can get that right, then we're always in with a chance to win the game. Early in the year, pressure was nowhere to be seen. We couldn't stick tackles, and that's completely shifted, and we've got our identity back. My only question is, when does the damn wall break free regarding our avalanche of injuries? Is it this game? I don't know. Hopefully not. I'd like to think we have the depth despite how far we're being stretched right now. We'll see what happens. So for the key matchups of the game, we got players like Scott Pendlebury versus Marcus Bontempelli. We know Pendlebury loves these tasks on his bigger body midfielders like Patrick Cripps. We know he's taken that task quite personally in the past, and just recently against Carlton when he matched up against Cripps, he did really well. He outperformed him. I think Cripps only had 20 odd disposals. Pendles had beyond 25 disposals perhaps, and kicked a clutch goal as well. So I think Pendles, if he's fit and firing, I think he'll relish this opportunity against one of the future greats of the game, Marcus Bontempelli. Nick Dacos versus Adam Treloar, similar stature in size. Nick Dacos probably just a better ball user, but Treloar very quick with his hands in the contest, will be an intriguing matchup. Treloar's actually averaging a career high 32.5 disposals, 6 clearances, which is also a career high, and he's currently at 39 coaches' votes for the year, his most since 2019, which he ended up getting 42 for the year. And his career high in 2016 for Collingwood was 64. So he's looking to eclipse those records very quickly, considering he's already at 39 coaches' votes up until round 12. Also in the backline for the Dogs, similar to Mitchell Hinge from the Crows, we must stop Bailey Dale's ball movement. He's the 4th highest rated medium defender in the last 5 games in the league, and averages half a goal assist. He's also kicked a couple of goals in the last 5 matches. I think 2 goals in his last 5. So maybe a task for Lockie Schultz and Bo McCreary to share the role in. So what would a win mean for both sides? For Collingwood, it means we keep in touch with contention for top 4. We'll probably need some sort of percentage boost at some point, and is massive to take into a game against King's Birthday, to have good form going into a massive game like that. Remember, I think it was last year, that was one of our most disappointing games against the D's on the Queen's Birthday clash before our bye back then. And then after the D's, we have North, which should be a win in our books, and then we have the bye. So that's why this game is so massive. Every game is massive, but this has just a little bit more to it, and it would be such a galvanising win for the Pies if we can do so against the Dogs. The win for the Doggies simply keeps them in the race for the top 8. They're currently out by 2 games, so 8 points, and have a massive percentage, so 121%. And they have another big game against the Brisbane Lions at Marvel next week, so they'll be looking to get their tails up before that game also. But that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.